Artist is the #1 non-essential job in Singapore. No matter what is your response to that, let's think about why is that so? Are there deeper lying issues involved? But before that, remember to follow and subscribe to my Instagram and YouTube accounts so that you will be notified of new content when they come out. Hi guys, today I'm very excited to be able to chat with Mr. Ee Wurn, the Programs Director of Singapore Chinese Cultural Centre. Ee Wurn and I were ex-colleagues in MediaCorp when he was the Vice President of Chinese Entertainment Productions. Welcome to the show, Ee Wurn.
Hi Rio, very nice to see you again.
I understand that you made the transition from broadcast production to being the Programs Director of Singapore Chinese Cultural Centre. How has it been so far? I mean, is there any similarities in terms of the job?
Definitely, because even though I'm no longer facing TV audience, but in my current role, it's not just performing arts that I'm doing. There will be exhibitions, there will be other content. So my past production skill set definitely applies, especially right now because we are doing some online content. So that comes in really helpful.
Recently, because of the COVID-19 situation, there was an article that became a big hoo-ha because artist was voted as the #1 non-essential job. But rather than to talk about this debate, whether the survey was even necessary or meaningful at all, or whether the report was misinterpreted, I thought that it reflected a deeper issue. And that is the fact that for us, we are not really valuing arts and culture that much. For example, we have a lot of companies that are offering free content online, and that attracted a lot of people. But once they start to collect ticket sales, the viewership will drop drastically. So I felt that the deeper issue was really that our people are not valuing arts and culture that much. What do you think about that, and how do you think we can do something about it?
For the longest time, I think the emphasis on engineering and versus arts, there seems to be a constant debate, going on for the education in Singapore. So that comes into play, and so for arts education, we really have to start young. That's why at SCCC, we've chosen our target audience to be the younger audience, so that when they grow up, they become the consumer of arts and they will pass it on to the next generation. And such habits have to be built from young. So this is the strategy that we embark upon.
I think you got a good point there, because for our generation at least, our parents used to tell us that artists cannot earn a living. If you become an artist, it's very difficult life for you, and it's very hard to earn a living. So subconsciously, I think we tend to attribute lesser value to arts because of that. But I think with our economy becoming better and with our next generation getting richer, so to speak, in terms of the amount of money that they can have access to and the resources that they can have access to, I think even the jobs that are arts and culture related should be getting a better remuneration nowadays.
I'm sure. And this has to pick up fast in order to change the entire landscape. I guess it's happening now, but it's just not fast enough. So people still feel that differentiation.
But on the other hand, I mean, you were talking about attracting the younger crowd, right? And for the younger crowd, typically they are willing to spend when it comes to, say, contemporary pop culture. The latest K-pop singers or the latest idols that come into Singapore shores, they are willing to spend upwards of like $300 for a ticket, for the concert tickets, right? So can we apply this sort of perhaps influencer marketing concepts to arts and culture?
I'm sure we can to a certain extent. It may not apply to all sectors, but to younger fanatical audience who become fan base to a pop singer or a pop act, that will apply, but not in a general sense, because not everybody would behave or willing to behave in such a manner.
But for arts and culture, I felt that over time, it does evolve a little bit, right? So, is it difficult, therefore, to ask the younger generation to appreciate the arts and culture of the older generation, for example? Is there a way for us to make it more attractive for the younger generation?
For us, when we say that our target is young audience, we try to look for a touch point, and a contemporary art form is definitely one. Because there is no point if we start off by staging, let's say, uh, totally, Chinese wayang, and you expect the young to come in to appreciate a performance like that. It's good to lure them in with something that is contemporarized for them, something that is relevant to them, so that they will be attracted. We do not want to scare them away. So I guess it's that touch point that we look for. It can be contemporary art form. I mean, that is one effective route.
Maybe can you give us an example of something that SCCC has done in order to attract the younger crowd?
Okay, in January earlier this year, we did a youth-based festival called Remix. In Remix, we did a number of activities. One of them is an art exhibition, an urban art exhibition. And we wanted it to be based on Chinese mythology. Chinese mythology, as we know it, includes manifestations of 西游记, of, let's say, 封神榜, So we got young artists that use their own interpretations of characters that are found in Chinese mythology and contemporize it. The paintings were very well received. In fact, we're going to start to do an online version, an online exhibition, maybe late July onwards. So more people can have access to this. So that is one example of how we bridge, I won't call it classical, but something that is more traditionally linked with something contemporary.
I think that is a very interesting approach, and it's a little bit like using or finding a different sort of a point of view or different kind of a packaging for the arts and culture in order to appeal to different audiences. Well, I recall the days when we were launching singing competitions in MediaCorp, and we had Project Superstar, we have Super Band and all that. And I always felt that the Chinese versions were a lot more popular than the English versions. Of course, there are many different factors involved, but to me, one of the important factors was that we had very professional judges in our panel. And especially for one of them, like Billy Cole, he literally taught the audience how to appreciate singing because he was giving very professional comments for the singers, right? So I thought perhaps that is also something that we might want to implement for arts and culture in general in Singapore, right? Because it could be the fact that a lot of us, maybe because of our emphasis on engineering and science, all this while, we do not know how to appreciate the arts. Do you think that is the case?
For the art sector, for a long time, I think there are a lot of very well traveled and very well exposed arts practitioners. So they would have brought in their expertise and skill set. And back on the topic of your analogy, I think for these Chinese professionals in the singing contest context, one of the reasons is also because they are exposed to very mature professional markets. And so they bring in their set of knowledge, and that impress viewers. I mean, like you said, we get to learn new technical facts about singing, for instance. So that is the part that is the exposure part. It's important that such exposure is shared and win new audience along the way.
I thought of the times where I visited museums abroad, right? And the fact that if I don't get an audio guide, I will not be able to appreciate the exhibition that much. My own limitations when it comes to enjoying the arts. So I do feel that perhaps there is a market, or there is a role for all of us to play in order to so-called improve the appreciation of the arts in Singapore in general. Do you think that this is enough?
I think that pretty much applies to everything because nobody would know it all. Nobody can appreciate it all. We all have to be led in the direction of, say, a creator to let us understand more about a piece of work, be it in a form of a painting or a sculpture. So, yes, I think in having good docents and guides, that is one area that can improve experience of visiting at a museum or a cultural center, definitely.
Do you think like digital will have a role to play in all this as well? How would it
Definitely.
change the way people can learn how to appreciate the arts?
Okay, at the rate we are converting performances and exhibitions online, you can actually take your time through, maybe even a longer time to appreciate an art piece online. So that would definitely help. Being in an online space, having more time and perhaps even plan for more resources in your descriptions, in your backstories and all that. Yeah.
So I suppose that's where your expertise can come in as well, right? Creating stories for the exhibits and so on.
We try. we try our best.
With COVID-19 situation, definitely exhibitions and all that have to be grounded to a halt. And I suppose that's why, like what you were mentioning, many of such, be it events or exhibitions, have all gone online. How do you think that will affect the future when this COVID situation is over? Are we able to get back to the norm, so to speak?
Everybody talks about the new norm, and there's this big question mark that are we ever going back to pre-COVID days? It may never come because we're still in the midst of it. The things that we have to grapple with would be the factors. If we do not have mass gatherings, how are we going to stage a concert, for instance? And the resources that are apportioned to creating such content, we need to justify it, with the number of people that can turn up. And the online space seems to take care of that part because you can reach more people now. You can even reach overseas audience. So there is a silver lining after all, even though this is a bad situation.
In the past, it seems like we will learn about certain exhibits or events online and then go to the physical
Physical
event
events.
itself to enjoy it, right? Perhaps in the future, it may be the other way around where the smaller groups is happening in the physical space and then the bigger gathering is happening online. Do you think that is possible?
Definitely. And it cuts both ways. So, you know, so in a way, it has opened up more doors, so to speak.
The key point is not to look at physical and digital as competitors, but to really look for the way to use both.
Complement each other, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And that will be the way forward, I think, for a
Definitely.
lot of different industries as well, right?
Yes.
So what are some of the upcoming plans that SCCC has with regards to the reopening after COVID, or maybe even in the longer term? What are the plans that you have?
As we try to reach the younger audience, even in a pre-COVID situation, online space is something that we cannot neglect. So in a way, because we are in a COVID-19 situation, that process has speed up. So, there's no running away, and we are launching a lot of online content. Some are performance-based, some are resources-based, and even things that are, for instance, it is a Tuan Wu Festival, okay? We can show origins of Tuan Wu in an animation video, for instance. And that's exactly what we did. For that particular project, even in the research part of it, I learned new things. I learned that Tuan Wu Festival is not just about Xu Yuan. There were other characters that were involved too. It's the research and the platform that gives new insights to even a traditional Chinese festival, I feel. And of course, at SCCC, what we try to do is really to highlight Singapore Chinese culture. It's not just Chinese culture we see in other territories, in Hong Kong, in Taiwan, in mainland China, but it's really our very local brand of Chinese culture.
Apart from the younger folks, I mean, I'm getting a bit jealous over here. Do you have anything
We are
for
young.
people?
Rio, we are young. We are young at
Do you have
heart.
anything for our generation or even our parents?
I think we are quite blessed. I mean, our generation, we get to enjoy the new tools of technology, like what we are doing now. I mean, we can't imagine this happening in the past. In the past, doing an interview would be a face to face, but now we can do it via Zoom. It's really the advancement that technology brings about. So, for our generation, we can appreciate, for instance, if a book gets transformed into a play, our generation who appreciates, let's say, reading would actually enjoy it on both levels. So yeah, this is one of the little things that we can appreciate, at our
Mm.
age.
So really the content is the thing that will appeal to all generations,
Yes,
whereas
content is still king. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, whereas you will use the tools, be it digital tools or otherwise, to differentiate the appeal to the different age groups probably.
precisely.
What can we expect? What would be the first project that you are looking at after COVID-19?
The Remix Festival that I talked about is
Mhm.
happening on an annual basis. This year, sadly, our annual cultural festival, we call it the Cultural Extravaganza, which normally happens in mid-May till mid-June. That has been cancelled because of COVID. So we are still changing our plans as we go because things are still not very much stabilized yet. But in the upcoming plans, what we have done is really we will plan for physical activities with the contingencies of going online. So there are all these components there. It has to be there because we can't go into just a single mode anymore, we realize, with COVID. And we just have to adapt to the evolving situation.
Thank you, Ewan. So if people are interested to find out more about SCCC or to talk to you on how to promote the Singapore Chinese culture, how can they reach you?
Please come to our website, which is singaporecccc.org.sg.
Thank you very much, Ewan, for your time.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, we hope this COVID-19 will blow over sooner rather than later,
Yes.
and that we can all gather once again in the physical space.
Yes, thank you.
The key takeaways.
Arts and culture connects us to emotions, but the fact is we have often undervalued them. This is due in part to the emphasis on science and technology in our education system. We do not see arts and culture as valued occupations. Most of us also lack the ability to appreciate the arts. So, if your business or product is being undervalued, don't blame the customer. Work first on educating and creating awareness for your product. At the core, stories or content is what connects people to the subject or your product. Digital is a tool to facilitate the accessibility. Regardless of industry, we should not see it as a replacement, but rather try to understand its strength so that you can balance and complement digital with the physical. Till our next episode, remember to win hearts, plant ideas, and inspire actions.